Howdy, y'all, and welcome to the Stay Creative Podcast, a show dedicated to celebrating independent artists and sharing their art and story. I have found that when we listen to a person talk about their passion, we can take some of it for our own. So this show is also dedicated to you, the listener, not only becoming a fan of the guest's work, but also taking another step towards growing as an artist and loving the artist you already are. The world is a better place with you and your creations in it, and I am grateful for this time that I get to share my current favorite artists with my future favorite artists. Today I am talking with 3 artists who have impressed and inspired me with their talent and mindsets. In addition to sharing their music, I have asked them on to discuss creativity, parenting, and how the two interact. First, you will hear a song by Atlantic Canyons. Then in the middle, you will hear one from our old friend Starcry, which actually features Atlantic Canyons. And at the end will be a song by Dreams of Lasers, featuring a Stay Creative favorite, somewhat Incognito. So it's a packed show in more ways than one. Please stay tuned. Thank you all so much for agreeing to talk with me, agreeing to share not only your music, but your creative experience, your insights, and your encouragements with folks who will be listening. I want to give each of you a moment to introduce yourself and introduce your project.
My name's Andrea. I live in New England with my husband and my 2 kids, ages 8 and 10. I've always had music in my life. Ever since I was really little, I played piano and violin. I was that orchestra geek in high school. And then in college, I started meeting more people and learning about different kinds of music. And I joined my first band. I never really wrote my own music. I just kind of played what other people were writing. And I did that with a couple different bands. And it wasn't until much later that I really felt like I wanted to express myself and write for myself, but I didn't have the confidence to do it. So I got my first Mac and I was using GarageBand, and all of a sudden I realized that this might be something that I would be capable of. And it just kind of went from there. And then after that was when I had my first baby, and things got very complicated after that. And, the music kind of went in and out. I'm at this point now, 10 years later, and I am I feel much more invested and much more motivated to really keep it going.
So wait, you're saying kids don't make things easier? That's what I heard.
Yeah.
Surprise.
Yeah, exactly.
Early on, you had no desire to make things from scratch. You only wanted to play like what you could learn, or did you just not have maybe the motivation or the belief that you could create those original things?
And I remember having this moment when I was about 10 years old, and it was my first year of playing in orchestra. And I I looked up from my instrument that I was probably playing horribly, and I looked around at the other kids. And, there were kids playing cello and kids playing bass and, viola and violin. And I realized that they were playing different parts than what I was playing. And like all of a sudden it clicked, and I was like, oh, wow, you can play music and someone else can play something different and it'll sound really cool together. Although I'm not sure how cool it really sounded. but the idea that was the first time it really hit me. And then I thought, wow, I wish I could play different parts all at the same time. That desire had always stuck with me, but it wasn't until I was exposed to the technology of a digital audio workstation that I realized that I could actually really make that happen all by myself. Yeah. I was in traditional bands where, there was a guitarist, a singer, a drummer, and I played keyboards or violin or whatever, and we were always playing together in time unless we were in the studio recording our individual parts. I would contribute to that. So I would add my part, but I was never in a position where I alone was working on something and writing all those parts and putting all those parts together. Feeling the thrill of being part of something where you're playing one component of it and then other people are doing their other parts, that's always been the thrilling part of the rush that I get playing music. And you take that rush when you're playing in a band or you're playing in some kind of musical group, and then you put that into a computer and you are the one responsible for all those parts. And like the rush is, for me, it's even more like it feels even greater because it's like, in some way I'm the one doing all these parts. And it feels really, really good. And so once I had a taste of that, that was made possible through GarageBand, I just took off from there. And it was really motivating. And I felt inspired and I just didn't want to stop. And then I had kids.
Yeah, I feel you.
And you still didn't stop.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, I think I paused. I don't know about you guys, but there was definitely a pause.
So I'm Dole Wedge, or my name is Chad, and I'm the one-man project artist, Dreams of Lasers. I'm from the San Francisco Bay Area. I'm from the East Bay, town called Hayward. Yeah, I was, I think, a pretty odd young person. I think that's for sure. I was voted most unique in high school. So I was an odd kid. And somewhere in high school, I decided I wanted to get a guitar and learn how to play. But I don't think, for me, musically, it really happened until college, where I just really went all in and played in multiple bands and wrote songs and played with other people. I did a lot of crazy things, like I played live on the radio for the college radio station, played in bars, and for money, we played in a pizza parlor for free pizza, a place called Cheezer's Pizza, which was great. We were in a movie. We were in a PSA, kind of public service movie about date rape. We were like in the band playing in the bar when the couple met.
Oh my.
We played giant house parties, like 200 people. So there was a lot of stuff that I did in college. After college, I moved back in with my parents, and that all kind of dried up. I had friends who moved to San Francisco, and I was in the suburbs, which was quite a ways away. A friend of mine tried to get me in one of his bands, and it was kind of a blow to my ego when the head of the band was like, "No, you're not good enough."
Oh,
and
man.
They got another guitarist who I was like, that guy is way better than me. So they made a better choice. And I still wanted to be part of music. So I got a job in like a cool record store in the East Bay. Which is where I met a bunch of people who really were into hip hop, not rock and alternative that I was more used to. And they said, let's make a group. So I was in this rap group for a couple of years called Illmatic Vibes.
Nice.
And I programmed the drum machine and keyboards, and I played some bass and guitar, and my friends rapped over it, and we did a couple albums and sold it locally. After that, I started a garage band with some friends. We called it the Orange Wedgies, which is a fun thing. And while that lasted a long time, I had my kids, career started. At the same time I was doing that, I started making these little songlets on my computer. And this has been 20 years. And I never really stopped doing that. And some of those little songlets would become real songs for the band. But then the band fell apart because people have kids, everybody got busy. And I decided to sort of double down on making the music on computer. And that's kind of grown into the Dreams of Lasers project. Lately, I've been doing a lot of collabs, and it's so much fun to play with people. It's hard to say no ever. I spent my musical career almost always trying to play with other people. So it is fun to figure out a way of doing it remotely, especially during this quarantine time.
I absolutely agree. Like, making music is its own reward a lot of times, but there's something special between people making music together.
We played together for like 10 plus years, me and my friends. Like, it's just jamming, but I had a pretty good ability to play guitar and sing random lyrics on the fly. And so we would just make things up. It was, I loved doing that. Some of the best things we ever did came out of that.
Starcry, or Eric, grew up in Redneck Town, Tennessee, from a long line of farmers and moonshiners. I started doing band work and production in a year that starts with 19, which is a long time ago now.
I didn't say any years, so.
It started out playing crust punk / metal, moved on from there in any number of different metal bands, projects. There's a pretty robust metal scene here, including some heavy hitters, and played with some of those guys, but not in the ones that they actually made it big in. Probably because of my influence, I just bring the whole thing down. I made my first production album in 2001. It was very similar to a project that I'm doing now with Loam called Pixel Army. Most of the people around the IMF crew know me as a pop producer, but that's not really what I've done forever. That's just something that happened to hit about the time that I joined up. So as many of you guys indicated, I also took a pause when my son was born. You kind of lack the time to focus on anything except keeping a tiny human alive. So, that's what I did for a very long time. And it was touch and go there for a while, but I picked it back up. Pandemic times seem to have a lot of free time and nothing to do with it other than, cry. Instead, I decided to start working on stuff again. Here we are.
I should have said this at the beginning, but we did a whole episode together, you and I, back
in
season 1 of the show. So some more of that information and just some more meat on the bones of what it sounds like when a thrash metal crust punk starts making pop. It does not sound how the listeners would assume, because both sound fantastic, and it's strange
amazing.
to. Yeah.
Thanks, man. And all those hardcore Starcry fans can go listen to that episode. I'm sure that they're clamoring for it now.
They are, yeah. It's like, look, if you didn't already know it was there, are you really a Starcry fan? What's wrong with you?
That's true. That's true.
Yeah. Becoming a parent is something that changes every single thing about your life, including your artistic approach. How has becoming a parent changed your artistic practice?
I think the first thing that comes to mind is time, the concept of time. When you're only responsible for yourself, you have a lot more time. Once you have a tiny human, right, that you're responsible for keeping alive and nurturing, a lot of your time is focused on that. And so anytime that you have the opportunity to be creative, to spend that time being creative, you have to take advantage of it. The biggest change in me that I've found is that I try not to let any opportunity to be creative or be inspired get wasted. If I'm in the zone and things are flowing and it's late at night, I don't want to go to bed because I don't know when that's going to end, when that flow of creativity is going to go away. So I try to hang on to it as much as possible. So I guess what I'm saying is I don't take anything for granted anymore, because it's hard to fit in that time. When you have that time, you use it and you try to be, without trying to sound boring, you try to be as efficient as possible. And and I'm not talking about like, spreadsheets and making sure that you have everything organized. I just mean you take advantage of every second that you have.
And sometimes you pay for it the next day.
Yeah, no doubt. I have paid for it, and I have had nights where, I'm just like, I can't go to bed, and somebody comes jumping on your bed at like 7:30 in the morning, and you have to feed that somebody breakfast.
Yeah. One thing that comes to mind talking about taking advantage of all the time that you do have is where I could sit around for months waiting to get inspired or motivated or an idea to come to me. Now I have to know how to make music intentionally.
To build on top of that, like when you have those moments where like it comes to you, you don't let that go away either. So I'll have, something pop into my head at random times, and I will pull up my little recording device on my phone and I will sing it into there just because I know that 10 seconds later I'm going to forget.
This is really unsafe, but I've done that while driving.
Yeah. Yes.
Do your kids ever look at you like you're crazy because you're singing into your phone?
100%. They look at me like I'm crazy. And I here's the funny thing. So my oldest one is 10. I did go through this time period where I was like almost worried about, not worried, but like getting this weird feeling like, oh, my child is judging me. Like she's judging me. She's looking at me like you're such a weirdo. And I had to get over that really quickly.
That was the perfect move, because that's what I was going to talk about, is my children being judgmental.
Please elaborate.
So my older son is a lot like me. I like to find something positive in everything. So my older one is usually like, yeah, that was really cool. My younger son is a lot more like my wife and could be a little judgmental. He always knows what he wants. He has an opinion on just about everything. And before the quarantine, he and I would drive to elementary school together. I would be playing my music and he just wouldn't pull any punches. That one sucks. Or I really like that one. He just always has a perverse pleasure in telling me that I can't sing. Like, you're terrible. I don't like your singing. And so he would be listening to like an instrumental that's in progress. And he's like, can you please not sing on this one? Because it's going to ruin it. And then I always sung on those ones because he has really good taste. I wanted the good ones to have vocals. But he would also give me great ideas. He would be like, here's the name of this one. He'd be like, that's going to be about aliens. He would just be like, this is what your song is about. I know. I'm listening. And that's right awesome. Now I'm working on a Life's Everyday soundtrack. And I got stems from Moonglow. So it's going to be really exciting because he's an amazing artist on IMF. And my youngest heard it. And he's like, oh, that's not you singing. Oh, that person's really good. Not like you.
Not like you.
Correct.
That's both fantastic and a little heartbreaking.
He also really loves to give me crap. And every once in a while, I know I've really done well. He's like, yeah, the singing's all right on that one. And I'm like, oh, yes, I'm doing good.
Yeah, that's awesome. You have your own little built-in family feedback loop. That's why you turn out such top-notch stuff, man. It's already gone through the gauntlet before we hear it.
Exactly.
So that being said, have you ever maybe intentionally brought your sons, maybe just your youngest son or both of them, in on your creative work?
They both can play piano, and we've had them in lessons for years. We have a drum set in the garage, and both of them like to play the drums, and they both will try the keyboards, and they have other instruments. I've had my son play the cowbell, and I've recorded with them like little sessions. I'm trying to make it like a weekly thing where we go into the garage and we play like as a little family band, but it's not consistent so far. But yeah, absolutely. I've recorded a few things. I've even shared a couple. People were like, oh my gosh, your son played drums on that? That's really good.
That's awesome.
And then the keyboards were really good. And I was like, yeah, that was all my kids just ad-libbing. I'm hoping to learn from my kids.
Yeah.
I hope to get up to that level. My oldest son is been playing piano for 5 years, and he's now doing like jazz real books and ad-libbing jazz. And I can't play piano anywhere near what he can do.
I mean, I'd probably second everything everybody said except the judgmental part, just because my kid is not old enough yet to be judgmental that way. So he has told me to stop singing quite a bit. So I think it's coming. Those time constraints have definitely made me more intentional and also far more of a finisher, because what everybody already kind of intimated here, there's no open-ended time anymore, because time is severely limited when you have a tiny one that same thing that ADL was talking about, I don't know when I'm going to get this time again, has made me focus far more on getting a product at the end, having something to really point to as a result of that time. Which is not to say I was terrible about finishing things before, but, it really got me into the groove of pretty much getting a song done within 4 hours, which I was doing through a lot of the early quarantine time. I would start a song as soon as he went to bed, and before I went to bed, it would be in a finished state.
That's amazing.
That's amazing. Yeah.
None of it is anything about my ability, but it became this sort of challenge of, I don't know when I can pick this up again. And so if I'd never pick it up again, if I sit down, tomorrow or the next day with a different idea in mind, I don't want this thing open in the back of my brain, stopping me from moving forward. Eventually, it was a process, but now it really helped me hone my workflow, specifically with production. Not nearly as much with writing or anything like that, but specifically my production workflow to make things happen as quickly as possible and to really translate the mental sound into what I want it to be, rather than sort of experimenting around until I found it. I kind of go, okay, I need a compressor on about 3-1. I know that's how I want it to sound. And cutting out as much of that dead weight as possible is really a result of having so many other things to do.
I think you could go the other way too. I think I've gotten better about getting back to things that I had worked on.
Absolutely,
before.
yeah.
4 hour. I think that's a skill, and I don't have it to do it that fast.
There are far better musicians than me on IMF, like all of them. The production thing, like I've been doing various production longer than a lot of really, really good artists have been alive. You just learn the shortcuts. The first time you ever sit down to paint a painting, it will take you 73 hours to get a color on there because you don't know what you're doing. Then after you've been doing it for a number of years, you've cut out all the process to its absolute bone.
You no longer have to consult the translation dictionary. You speak that language.
Right.
Yeah.
Man, how do you come up with the perfect language related metaphor, and I couldn't even manage it.
Yeah, you speak. How many languages do you speak, Starcry?
3 reasonably, and maybe about 4 others that are functional, meaning I wouldn't die if you dropped me in the country.
Yeah. I think knowing that about you is the only reason I came to language dictionary as my metaphor.
See, but it's brilliant. Come on, man. This is why you're the host.
Oh yeah, man. I like to think there's a reason. Do you think your creative background has changed the way you parent?
It's left me to sort of think about how it relates to the parenting process. I think it's really easy to be present but not present, which is something that I know you can get your mind in, Trex. Like, you're there, you are physically there, but you've got your mind on 1,000 other things and what you're doing and all that kind of stuff. It's sort of led me to be like, this is the music time. I'm going to do the music now. This is the hanging out playing trucks time. So I'm going to hang out and play trucks time.
Yeah.
I really have that reverse to thank, that the fact that when I'm doing the music, I want to focus on that, and that's how I get things done. So how can I expect anything different from time that I spend with my kid?
The way to get the best out of the good and the best out of the difficult is to be as present with both of them as you can. What about you, Dolage?
I don't think so. I wanted to make sure that they saw I was doing something I loved. It's kind of funny because I take a lot of inspiration from my father, who was someone who didn't care about his career. He was pretty unmotivated. He was a truck driver for 30 plus years. But he lived for the weekend. He was a daredevil. He was a river rafter and a kayaker and a hang glider pilot. Yeah. And I think he needed that excitement in his life, danger or whatever. He was like, I'm doing my job all week so that on the weekend I can do whatever it is. And I want my kids to see that I can do the things that I love to do, even if that's not exactly what I do to make a living. I think that's a model that I learned from my own father.
Obviously, the cliche actions speak louder than words applies in a lot of ways, but I think nowhere better than for the people that are going to imitate your actions someday. Beautifully thoughtful, man. I appreciate that. What about you, ADL?
My whole life has been music. Like, I just love music, and I think music all the time, and I'm just motivated to do music, and I always have been. And I don't care what my kids end up doing. What I want to see from them is the same kind of passion towards whatever it is. Obviously, I would love it if it were music. I'm seeing that it's not. Like my oldest is really into art. She's amazing with her drawings and she's very creative. She does these impressive videos and she's funny and original, and she comes up with these really kind of funny comic sketches that she films on her iPad. And it's great. Like I love seeing that spark, that creative spark in her. You know, having that background in music and knowing how it feels, that feeling that it gives you, I want to encourage that as much as I possibly can and nurture it when I see it in my own kids. And that's the most important thing that I take away from it.
They need to know that just because art isn't your job or your passion isn't your job doesn't mean you can't have that passion. Doesn't mean you shouldn't invest your time and yourself into what you love.
Right.
But you're forcing them to play music, I hope.
I've stopped. I can't. It's too much. And then actually you bring up an interesting point. I was thinking about this, that before I had kids or early on when they were just really, really little, I believe that I had more influence than I actually do over who they are and what they're going to be. And as they've gotten older, I've realized that I don't really have any control over that at all. My only job is to make sure that they're good people and to nurture that spark or the things that bring them joy in the world. When I start working on a song in its infancy, I have more control over what it's going to be than as it grows into itself and then the song becomes more manifested, right? At some point, I feel like I reached this critical point in working on a song where it starts telling me what it wants. At some points, I have to take a guess, like, you know, maybe you need this, maybe you need that. And sometimes the song's like, yeah, that's what I needed. Or no, you're totally wrong. I totally didn't need tambourine in that section. That's not what I want. And I feel like it's very similar with my own kids, where even for you, T-Rex, you have to, you know, like, she's upset. Do we need to change her diaper? Is she uncomfortable?
Yeah.
Like, is it the tag in her shirt that's bothering her? Is she sleepy? Is she hungry? You know what I mean? Like, you're like trying to troubleshoot this whole thing and make sure that she's happy and comfortable, right?
Yeah.
At my work, there are a lot of people of approximately the same age who all have kids that are in the like 0 to 5 range. One of my coworkers talked about something that she had picked up. Many parents try to start as an architect. They try to plan out and organize and create the systems to get a certain end result, the same way that an architect would plan something out. But in reality, the only thing you can be is a gardener. You can set up all the conditions. You can make sure that needs are met and nurturing is happening. But in reality, it's all reaction, not proaction. ADL is basically talking about that applied to music as well, which that whole mindset, that whole paradigm has been something that I've kind of dedicated myself to since I had that conversation. It makes your life a lot happier if you do the AA thing and accept the things that are out of your control.
Yeah.
My favorite songwriters have the ability to put the words in the order that the words already wanted to be in. And I think the same thing, what you're talking about here with raising children, is you're really just trying to help them safely and healthily grow into the people that they're already growing into.
Exactly.
I would be a terrible host of a creativity boosting podcast if I did not give each of you a chance to share with me what you have learned in your time making music that makes a song its best self.
As the quote unquote artist, I have to be the one that starts the thing out, but I also have to be really careful not to let whatever preconceived notions I have influence whatever it is I'm going to do. And I used to have a much bigger problem with that than I do now. Like somebody would say, oh, you know what would be really great here is to have a breakdown that feels really slow. And I'd be like, no, I hate those kinds of breakdowns. I'm not doing that kind of breakdown. So shut your face. And now, it's a little bit more, I give credence to those things. It doesn't mean I have to bend completely to the will of those who would give me advice. But yeah. It means that if somebody's saying something, there's going to be some merit there, and maybe I can be better at my craft if I don't get into the stereotypical artist mindset. Architect versus gardener, right? If I plan this thing out how I want it to be, and I'm like, man, I'm going to make a Swedish melodic death metal track. And I sit down to make a Swedish melodic death metal track, and that's all I let into my tiny little world made of paper, then it will, I'll get that result. I'll have a Swedish melodic death metal track, but is it really the best thing I could possibly be doing? Sometimes it's just important to be a conduit rather than a pillar.
The way you do anything is the way you do everything. Your openness to a suggestion about a track is going to be your openness to suggestions and the other things you do.
In my non-Starcry job, I'm a teacher. We talked about that in the last one. So I deal with 15-year-olds all day long, which is, I believe, what Dante really meant when he talked about the ninth circle of hell. You very quickly find out if you give them power. If you take, as you say, Trex, if you take those suggestions, suddenly the relationship is 1,000 times better. Like, I'll just ask them a really silly question like, hey, what should we do about late work? And you'd think, being the kids that they are, they'd be like, well, late work shouldn't have any penalty whatsoever. We should be able to turn it in whenever. But they don't do that. They say 10% per day is fair, and somebody will go, well, that could get a little hard depending on this situation or this situation. Why don't we say like 10% every 2 days? And I'm like, cool, that works for me, 10% every 2 days. And suddenly they trust me 1,000 times more, and our entire relationship works a lot better. And I try to do that with my kid too, and be like, what do you think we should do here? Give them the chance to make those kinds of decisions. It works with music too. It's like the more I have a relationship with those people that listen to it, those people that I talk to, the people that I give feedback on and they give feedback on me, the more open I am to those suggestions, the more respected they are, and the more it becomes a conversation.
I really loved what Starcry just said. I mean, that whole being a conduit thing for music is so true. Like I was saying earlier, when I played with a band, some of the best things we ever did was a jam. It's because you just disappear and you just do whatever makes sense for that moment. It's the best. That's the best feeling, I would say, for anyone, but especially parents or people who don't have a lot of time. Just having a setup where you are ready at any moment when inspiration strikes. Like I have microphones in the right place and all set up, and I have templates. Templatize everything. Like make multiple templates for when you think you might use this setup or this setup, and just get the part that's sort of not creative thinking, but organizational thinking done, and do it. And then when it's time to be creative, or you want to be creative, you won't have to do that organizational thinking.
I think the advice that they gave is great. It's both philosophical and practical, and I would agree with all of that 100%. I think about all the times where I've created the things that I'm most proud of, and I just remember the joy that I felt during that time period. Specifically, like the times where I've done something and I'm like, ooh, I'm going to try this here. And I listened to it and I liked it so much, I laughed out loud. That's the sign that I've done it right, is when it actually makes me laugh out loud. Never forget that the real reason why we do this is because we love it and because it's fun. There are times where we get frustrated, for example, when the software is not working, or when the guitar is locked up in the case, where we feel frustration and it kind of kills the vibe. I would try to address those and eliminate those as much as possible to reduce the amount of friction. So that kind of goes along with what Dulwich and Starcry were saying. But also remember that it's really just all about enjoying it. What goes hand in hand with that is to not really have any expectations. You have to be kind to yourself. Really just remember, hey, I'm just here to have fun. If some cool stuff comes out of it, that's even better.
There was a time when I wanted to be a writer, as in writing prose novels or something like that. And there was a book on writing by Anne Lamott that talked about shitty first drafts. And it's like, you can't get to the best draft until you've done the shitty first draft. So you just have to get away from that fear of not doing something well. You want to actually try something that you're going to fail at, or you might fail at, to get to something that you're proud of.
To bring that quote into the present, Jake the dog from the cartoon Adventure Time said, sucking at something is the first step to being kind of good at something.
Yes.
So true. Yeah.
And I love that show, and I love that quote, and I love the one you just shared as well, Dulwich.
Made a wrong turn, lost my way. Lost myself where I don't want to stay. Made bad decisions for a while. Got turned around by the tears of a crocodile. One less mistake would put me back on track. I'm a heart attack away from being in the ground. So much that we wanted was out of reach, and they wanted to tell a lie. That's what they preach. Find the least worst way to go. It might be wrong, but maybe just a little less so. After I fall down, get back up. I never learned that enough is enough. So much that we wanted was out of reach, and they wanted to tell a lie. That's what they preach. You were never much of a go-getter. Yeah, that's what they said. Now it's going from bad to better, but it's in my head. You can never go back. Half measures are better than none. A step closer to getting it done. Not exactly to the letter. Moving from bad to better. Half measures are better than none. A step closer to getting it done. Not exactly to the letter. Moving from bad to better. So much that we wanted was out of reach, and they wanted to tell a lie. That's what they preach. You were never much of a go-getter. Yeah, that's what they said. Now it's going from bad to better, but it's in my head. You were never much of a go-getter. Yeah, that's what they said. Now it's going from bad to better, but it's in my head. You can never go back.
I'm so grateful for the time my friends are able to share with us today. So much of what they said resonated with me as a parent, but also as someone seeking to protect and nurture the creative spark in myself as well as in others. In seeking to remember the joy, staying with what I am doing even when it is challenging, and learning to embrace feedback or suggestions wherever they come from, are not only helpful in my music making, but in all of the stuff of life. If you like what you heard today, you can find links for the artist and this show in the show notes. Be sure to go and listen, like, and follow the artist where you can so the algorithm gods are beneficial for them. And share this show, leave a review, like or comment, whatever you can do on the streaming service you use. It would mean a lot to me for the sake of the show, but it would also mean a lot for this show's ability to promote these artists well, to honor the time they are sharing with us, and to love independent music a little bit better. But of course, your time is the first and best gift you can give, so thank you very much for listening. I hope to share more of that time very soon, but until then, please stay courageous, stay curious, and stay creative.